In today's video, I'm going to give you a little bit of a virus update about what's happening in China and the US. From there, we're going to have a look at some of the conflicts that are occurring between China and India, and of course, North Korea and South Korea. I will also be having a quick look at US retail sales and what's going on with the Fed. Hello and welcome to another acysecurities market update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. The first thing to have a look at is that we do have a number of infections that have occurred in Beijing. We did report on this yesterday, but we have seen double the number again. We're now got infections surpassing 100. We've had schools and food markets shut down and travel has been restricted in Beijing. Now, there is concern of this being a bit of a second wave when the fact is we're still in the first technically. So can you really consider it a second wave? Not really sure on that matter, but regardless of the fact, we are having some concerns about whether this is going to continue and we're going to get the same sort of things that happened the first time round when the pandemic started. Now, moving on to Florida and Texas, they have also reported the highest level of COVID-19 cases since the beginning of the pandemic. So, with the lockdowns easing, the riots and the protests, there has been a rise in infectious cases, and we're expecting this to be the case to continue on. Now, it is getting to that point now where it's been about 2 weeks since some of these the impact of the viruses may start to be seen from the protests and the rioting and obviously the reduced social distancing. So hopefully this doesn't mean that the rest of the US state does end up in a situation where they are unable to combat the disease or illness and have to return to a lockdown state. Now, moving on from that, today we have also got some new news overnight that's occurred between China and India. We've seen a small skirmish occurring over a border. Now, this is the Himalayan border. It is a part there near Pakistan and India and obviously China, where there has been a lot of issues over the last number of years or several decades. The last time they had a skirmish was in roughly 1975. But this time round, India is reporting that approximately 20 soldiers have died on their side, and we haven't heard what's going to happen from the Chinese side. However, we can assume that there are probably injuries and fatalities on their side as well. Now, what's going to happen next is going to be quite interesting. It is a flashpoint right now for what is going on with the rest of the world. India has been pushing towards this idea of an industrialized state and wanting to get some of the business that China would usually have. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has left some countries with a little bit of bad taste in their mouth about how it has gone around the world, and obviously the origins of the virus have been concerned by a number of Western communities. Now we've got a little bit of interest coming from the US as well. So this is going to be a heavily monitored situation. Hopefully it does simmer back down and we do not have any further loss of life. We've also had some firing up from the North Korean side. We've seen them blow up the liaison office between North Korea and South Korea. It's all started when some activists on the South Korean side of the border decided to release some anti-Pyongyang activist sort of leaflets across the border that have blown over. And this is not something that is new. It has happened several times before. But what is new is that the liaison office, which was a sign in 2018 of perhaps some peaceful resolutions coming between the two nations, to have been blown up. So it is an obvious side to say that there is not going to be much negotiation happening here right now. On the positive side of this is that it hasn't been caused any loss of life, and that it has really been about sending a message. At least that's what it looks like. North Korea has also decided to start sending in troops to the demilitarized zone on their side of the border and are arming all of those troops naturally as it comes. There have also been some envoy requests by South Korea wanting to send 2 diplomats to have a discussion and perhaps see if they can simmer down the tensions, but they have been rejected by North Korea so far. Now, in the other news that's really gone on overnight, we have seen some phenomenal results for US retail sales. We have had May retail sales jump 18% when the expected was meant to be around 8%. So that is a very big jump between the two, starkly different circumstances of what we were expecting and what it's actually been. Now, what we do know at this point in time is that that's probably good for the economy. It means that consumers are less concerned about their paychecks and are starting to purchase things and get into that sort of same routine of consumer behavior that might have been occurring before COVID-19. Now, regardless of this, it is still subdued on the reality of things. If you were to look at what the results were at this time last year for US retail sales, there is a little bit of difference. But after having such a prolonged period of time with no sales really coming through, it is nice to see that it is starting to put a little bit of a boost. Now, this doesn't mean that it's going to be prolonged. This may not mean that we have more sales occur on a regular basis of this magnitude. It might mean that they start to stabilize, but we won't know too much right away. The true outlook still remains uncertain for what retail sales and the US economy are to expect, much like the rest of the world. And whilst we are getting some big fluxes of positive data, we have to remember that the previous lots of data that we had were extremely negative. Now, some more news has come from the Fed chairman we've got here today with Powell speaking. He was basically jawboning about what was going on. So that means he's been talking down the stimulus packages. And there are some issues with what's going on with the stimulus packages because people are starting to have a look at what's gone on in the last year and what the US debt levels were at the beginning of this year. US corporate sector debt was close to $10 trillion at the beginning of 2020. Now, to put that in perspective, that's nearly 47% of their GDP. And we've got a lot of influx for this corporate bond side of purchases that are going to be happening from the Fed. And so naturally, we're hoping that this doesn't mean that we're going to get more zombie businesses or zombie stocks that are going to continue to rise, such as Hertz, who are a bankrupt company that are doing a share listing again to have more stocks to the value of $1 billion. Naturally, these sort of companies should likely be delisted in the coming months, but we won't know for a little while, to say the least. And we do need to keep an eye on what is going on with this situation because of the magnitude of debt the US has right now and how over-leveraged it really looks. Now, to have a look at what's going on with the news ahead of today, we do have CPI, PMI and RPI coming from the UK. We have Eurozone CPI, Canadian CPI, US housing results and new building permits coming out. And in addition to that, we're going to be hearing from Fed Powell again at about 3 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, if there's anything from today's video or perhaps some of the other videos you'd like to get in contact with me about, please feel free to get in contact via talktoal@acy.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.